Kevin's epic fails, a hilariously bad saga. I apologize in advance to whatever brave soul dares to try and stay sane after this tale of woe, misery, and an entitled guy who just doesn't know how the world works. A fella who's best described as worrisome, passionate, very sexist, a pinch racist, and strongly against educating himself in any way. Buckle in, this will be a ride, but one you will not be able to look away from. A descending tragedy like a train wreck. Chapter 1. I introduce you to pubescent Kevin. I had the displeasure of meeting Kevin when I was in high school. He was one grade ahead of me. My freshman year, we were friends, or at least friendly. He was a little ditzy, but I didn't care. He would confidently say things like, "Physics don't apply to the real world. Those are all numbers and letters. I don't see them floating around it all the time. They're not real. And I've come to the conclusion that lizards are the best animal to lick your wounds when you get an injury because they can grow back whole limbs. If their DNA gets in yours, you'll heal quicker." To be fair, we were still in high school, but he was a senior when he said that. I first started to get actual red flags from him when he started getting into regular shouting matches with other people when he was clearly and solidly in the wrong. One time he screamed at a teacher because he was talking about heavily drinking, and the teacher said, "You can't discuss that stuff in front of me." I don't care personally, but I have to report that stuff. I hear it. That sent him off. Somehow he was screaming that alcohol is not addictive, and then that there's no such thing as being addicted to anything, and that it's just a mindset. I left when he started to rant about how he's got a special stomach that makes it where alcohol doesn't make him drunk. Even as a 15-year-old, I was like, wow, this guy does not know how anything works, does he? A mutual friend of me and Kevin's, let's call her Karen, was a lesbian at the time. It was a huge point of discourse in our school because we lived in the South and she was in a very open relationship with another girl. Did I think it was wrong for people to treat her badly because of it? Yes. Did I, as her friend, know she was batshit crazy? Also yes. Anyhow, at some point she breaks up with her girlfriend and starts dating Kevin, despite the red flags that literally everyone else saw and warned her about. I came to the conclusion that she must be bi rather than lesbian, and when it came up in casual conversation one day, he triumphantly said, "Yeah, I always knew she was straight. I mean, it's the only real sexuality. She was always fooling herself. I would say I turned her straight, but there's no such thing as actually being gay." Classy. That was the last conversation with him I had in school. After that, I just kind of distanced myself from him, Karen, and the rest of that friend group because they were all crazy. My at the time girlfriend, now fiance, however, did not. My fiance, Babe, transferred to the school halfway through her junior year. And unfortunately, due to the fact that most everyone in the school was racist, did not make a lot of friends. Except, conveniently, the friend group that Karen and Kevin were a part of. I could go on story after story after story, but they were all fake friends who wanted a token black friend, and that's all Babe has been for them. But that's a separate story. I'd like to focus on Kevin and his now wife, Karen. Dear reader, if you were under the impression that we're nearing the end, prepare yourself. Compared to what's to come, all else makes Kevin look like a rocket scientist. Babe graduated a year before me, in the same class as Karen, Kevin, and most of their friend group. As such, there was a little overlap between Babe graduating and beginning her adult life, and me beginning mine. While I was finishing my senior year, I was hearing horror stories through Babe on the side. It was like a drug. I lived for the rush. This brings us to Chapter 2. Kevin and Karen nurture their budding adult relationship, to the horror and dismay of everyone around them. Kevin quit his part-time job at McDonald's because he felt disrespected by everyone. So Karen was the only one working. Kevin eventually gets kicked out of his mom's, so he moves in with Karen, who still lives with her dad, and, I think, stepmom. Around this time, I found Karen's TikTok, where she announced that she and Kevin were trying to get pregnant, while still living at home with her parents. She then makes a TikTok one day titled something along the lines of, "My dad flips out that I'm pregnant." The video is literally just her showing her dad a positive pregnancy test and him disappointedly going, "Wow, you really threw your life away. I can't support both of you and an infant. Have you thought about the commitment of having a baby? Your job is about to fire you, and Kevin is unemployed. How are you going to do this? Neither of you are mature enough to do this, and you didn't discuss it with me first, which is really frustrating. He basically reacts to her news in real time and tells her that she and Kevin will, big surprise, need to find a new place to go. So they moved in with, again, I think, Kevin's grandparents, who apparently treated Karen like shit. And guess who didn't defend her or back her up? Big surprise again, Kevin. Brother tucks his head in the sand, and after Karen gets fired, she becomes the house's new live-in maid. After some silence, aside from Babe occasionally giving updates about the pregnancy, disaster strikes. Again, Kevin wrecks their only shared car. The dashcam footage showed him falling asleep at the wheel, and when Karen tries to wake him up, he loses it, and in a fit of violent rage, crashes their car. I don't know the details too well, and as someone who's never been in trouble with the law, I also don't know how probation works. But from what I could gather, he had to do community service, and he also tried a few times to break the rules of his probation. His driver's license wasn't taken away, just restricted, meaning that he was allowed to drive. But if he broke the rules of the road in any way and got caught, the consequences would be more severe than normal. Does he take that to mean that he needs to drive better and improve himself? Nope. Now he just refuses to drive anywhere. Guess who becomes their regular designated driver? My lucky fiance, Babe. It may seem like Babe made some odd decisions to stay in touch with Karen and Kevin due to their mountain of red flags, and now looking back, I think me and her can agree it was silly to continue to indulge them. But to be honest, it was the biggest source of entertainment we had for that chapter of our lives. I had freshly moved out of my parents' house and in with her, so I was in the first stage of figuring out how adulting was going to work for me. It was stressful, but the knowledge that a couple living just a few blocks away had made so many bad decisions in such a short amount of time helped me feel less doomy about how my life was going. Babe started giving Kevin and Karen rides everywhere, since literally no one else would. The people who liked and felt bad for Karen refused to have anything to do with Kevin, especially after the car crash where he visibly lost it on his pregnant girlfriend. So Babe took them to doctor's appointments, attempts to get their own apartment, even though neither of them were working at this point in time, grocery runs and other such things. Then came the day for them to learn the gender of their baby. After months of Babe giving them rides, free food, and in some cases, cold hard cash, Babe assumed she would be allowed to follow them into this appointment, as she had done time and time before, and also because, oh yeah, Karen straight up told Babe that she would be allowed to attend. When they get to the doctor's office, Kevin from the back seat tells Babe, "Oh yeah, we feel like it wouldn't be appropriate for you to know the gender of our baby before everyone else. Could you stay in the car?" To which Karen swiftly tries to shut him up because their freebies were hinging on Babe's goodwill, which Kevin had already strained through his various other antics while being provided a free ride. Babe said, "No, that's fair, but it's also fair for me to go home as soon as y'all go inside, because this was already an inconvenience to me in the first place. So if that's a decision you want to make, go ahead and call someone else to pick you up and take you to the mall." Babe was also about to take them on a free trip to the mall and their doctor's appointments, which again, she had taken them to for free, was 2 hours away from where they lived. Kevin quickly quieted. Even though he's not the brightest, I think even he knew that he didn't want to be stranded 2 hours away from home with his pregnant girlfriend. In the end, Karen apologized and told Babe that she wanted her there, and they found out that the bouncing baby boy would soon be on our planet with us. So off to the mall they go, where Babe shops for baby items with them, and then gives them a $20 limit for lunch for the two of them. To no one's surprise, Kevin spends it all on himself and says, "I thought you were giving us both $20. Oh, Kevin. And the cherry on top is that instead of splitting it amongst them, or giving the mother of his child the meal and eating later, he ate the whole thing. Oh, Kevin, so this ends the pregnancy chapter. Now I will say the end is in sight. We're almost done now. One more long chapter to go. The lunacy, the entitlement, though almost too much for one reader to handle, will soon be over. Those who chose to stay are in for a treat, because before it gets better, it has to get worse. Chapter 3, Kevin Gets Hitched. After a while, Kevin and Karen downsize from his grandparents' house to the quaint little homeless shelter. While living there, Karen gives birth to their baby, Ezekiel, and so begins Kevin's I'm a dad era. Babe comes to me with the concern that Karen is really underweight and that Kevin may not be letting her eat enough, and asks if we can have them over for dinner once or twice a week. If not for the entertainment, at least so Karen can gain some weight. So I agreed. To be honest, my social life was kind of dead between college and work, and I wanted to cook for more people than just Babe. So we worked out a time where we'd go pick them up and have dinner and maybe watch a movie. The first few times it was nice, if not a little awkward, since I hadn't personally really seen either of them since they graduated high school, and they had a whole-ass baby with them, which had to be entertaining in some capacity, right? It's a good thing I don't have kids because my expectations were way off. Since this creature was pretty much a newborn, he didn't do much other than sleep and cry when Kevin tried to feed him something he was too young to eat, which Karen had to whisper fight with him over. Awkward, but also really funny to talk about with Babe after they left. I got to see Kevin go on long rants about how the Earth may actually not be flat around, but some secret other shape that science hasn't figured out yet. I got to see him confidently announce that he wouldn't be watching the new Daredevil show because Charlie Cox won't be starring since Disney fired him for saying slurs. That one floored me a little because he'd already been in No Way Home and She-Hulk at that point and was confirmed to star in Daredevil, Born Again. But Kevin insisted that woke Disney had definitely fired the guy, which he had heard from a friend, and refused to look up and verify. Well, that aged poorly. He also talked about how he was really astounded that I was in college at 18. Both me and Babe had jobs, our own place, and a car each. He was like, "How'd you do it?" And I had to bite my tongue to keep from saying, "By not being an ignorant bonehead for the last 3 years." But instead, I just told him, "I guess I'm just lucky." It was around that time that I realized that he was trying to emulate my life with Babe through his own backwards methods. He found out we had our own apartment. He tried to get a low-income housing apartment in the same area. I'm in college for welding. He also wants to be in college for welding. We have a Mazda. He also wanted a Mazda for their next car. What he didn't seem to pick up was that our success, which wasn't even success, it was just normal Zoomer suffering, was because we didn't try to rush into the 3 kids, 2 dogs, goes to church every Sunday with a white picket fence and a cottage, life that he envisioned for himself and Karen. He's also really conservative, but instead of being rich conservative like he thought he'd be, he's broke all the time. Hateful conservative, which me and Babe are not. Broke all the time, yes, not hateful though, LOL. The only reason our relationship works is because we don't approach it at a conservative angle, which he tuned out every time I gently tried to tell him when he'd ask how we have it so good. Then comes the day we'd been dreading. Through the grapevine, we learned that it would seem that Karen and Kevin had spent as long as they could at the homeless shelter and needed somewhere to go. They were being evicted. Babe immediately envisions that we would be on their list of people to call and ask for a place to stay. On that same day, we get a phone call. It's Kevin. "Hey, I hate to ask, but no one will take us and our baby. You're our last option, and if you say no, I'll understand. But me and Karen need at least a roof over our heads for our baby. We'll sleep in the bathtub if we have to, but could we please have a place to stay?" Me and Babe discuss it. I was pretty against it, but Babe felt bad for Karen and the baby. She didn't really care much for Kevin, which came as a surprise to no one. Babe and I came to the conclusion that we'd get an inflatable bed, a nice one at that, and clean the spare bedroom for them. We'd help them pick up their things from the shelter and give them 2 weeks. So we get everything squared away, get them into the house, and notice the lack of an infant. So we asked them and they said, "Oh yeah, we left Ezekiel with Kevin's mom. She's gonna watch him for the first week. No newborn in our house? Great, win in our book." Unfortunately, the newborn likely would have been a better house guest. Night 1 of this extended sleepover, I pull out a bottle of scotch, gifted to us over the holidays, and pour myself a glass while I made dinner. Karen asked if she could have a cup, and Kevin hastily blurts, "Don't give her any alcohol. She's pregnant." Me and Babe immediately asked, "What are you talking about?" Apparently, I think she had like 2 positive pregnancy tests a month before she moved in with us. But they took another 2 the night before they moved in. 1 was negative, 1 was positive. They told us they think she's pregnant because of that, and that they didn't think it'd be a big deal to mention that to us. To be fair, it wasn't really. but also would have been nice to have been given a heads up about. Also, she had just had Ezekiel 3-ish months before her 2 positive pregnancy tests, meaning she'd gotten pregnant within 3 months of giving birth. I'm no expert or anything, but I've heard that's not good. I also heard from both of them that it was Kevin's idea. Sheesh. Within the 2 weeks they lived with us, they broke our cooking utensils, racked up our electricity bill, regularly commandeered devices we were trying to use, and turned our spare room into a pigsty. I understand that a lot of their stuff was damaged while living in the shelter, so most of their personal belongings were dirty and smelly, but they just made more and more and more garbage. They stole things while we were with them in public. They left actual rotting food on the floor and hoarded food they bought and food we bought for the household in their room. You literally couldn't see the floor past the sheer amount of actual garbage there was. That was without the baby. Kevin thought he was a culinary fucking magician. He'd spend the little money they did have on extravagant food, expensive spices, when he wasn't carelessly wasting ours, and wasted an entire bottle of expensive novelty blueberry barbecue sauce I was gifted on BBQ burgers that tasted awful. Half the time he got food or cooked, he'd give us a free sample's worth for dinner and take the rest to their room and leave all his dirty dishes. One day, Karen started a fight with me over how I chewed my own food in my own house. I was eating lunch, and she started commenting on how I was chewing with my mouth open, and when I chewed with my mouth closed, she complained that she could hear it, and said she had a phobia of gross noises. I basically told her that if she had a problem with how I ate my food, she could go eat in another room. She just kept on arguing, and Kevin joined in. So Babe pulled out her mini speaker, turned on mouth noises on full volume, and just stared at Karen. Karen and Babe just stared at each other for about 3 minutes before Babe turned off the noise and said, "Now that I have your attention, please stop telling us how to eat. We want to be accommodating, but you're doing too much." Babe turns and points at me. "He's been polite towards you and Kevin, even though he didn't even really want y'all here in the first place. You're staying rent-free. Stop bossing the way my partner chooses food." Karen just went to her room crying. Kevin apologized on her behalf and said it's just a lot, which me and Babe could agree on. After that, she apologized. But does it stop there? No way. They complained about what we made them to eat, what shows we watched, what games we played, and Kevin critiqued how liberal positive we are, and that he didn't really want the baby around that kind of stuff at a young age. Don't we think we can move some stuff out of view so it doesn't influence Ezekiel? The liberal positive stuff in question? The Disney Lightyear movie, a bi flag in my bedroom, and a really funny hand-painted picture that Babe bought of a crying black guy on the toilet that we had hanging up in our bathroom. Ironically, we also had a flag in our living room that had Benjamin Franklin on it that says "tax this dick," that he had no problem being around his kid. Then one night, Babe, being 21, took edibles. Kevin, also being 21, begged her to let him even though part of his probation was that he had to be sober. We both said we weren't comfortable with him doing that. At some point, Karen, also being 21 at this time in a legal state, also asked if she could use an edible. Me and Babe were skeptical, but she swore up and down that she had been high lots of times, and at this point had convinced us that she wasn't pregnant. Stupidly, we let her take a whole 50 milligrams CBD edible. So to be clear, the ones of us who could drive are me and Kevin, and he doesn't have a car. So later, when me and Babe were having some alone, maybe passionately hugging time, as one would say, Kevin bangs on the bedroom door, screaming that there's an emergency. We got decent and rushed to their bedroom. Karen was just asleep. She was responsive, but just didn't want to wake up, which Kevin is losing it over. She's not shaking or showing any signs of distress. Her blood pressure was normal. She was breathing. She was just really high. We told him that she in no way needed to go to the hospital for this, to which she agreed and to just let her sleep it off, and that she's clearly just tired. But he's claiming it's an emergency. We warn him to let her sleep it off, and eventually he agrees. So back to bed, me and Babe go, but she sobers up and we both stay vigilant. By 9 p.m., we have a movie on, and it sounds like everything is settled back down, until we hear Kevin cursing in the bathroom while the bathwater runs. This moron has carried his unconscious girlfriend to the bathtub and, while fully clothed, put her into our bathtub full of cold water to shock her awake. She had a fucking seizure in the bathtub, which led him to try and undress her. Kevin was frantic and panicking, while me and Babe were both like, "Dude, you should have just listened to us. She was fine before." I've never had to deal with someone having a seizure, and they weren't comfortable with me being nearby since she was partially naked. So now Babe has to try and deal with Karen and Kevin, while one of them blubbers incoherently and the other has a seizure in our bathtub at 10 at night. Eventually she's fine and just goes to bed because she's understandably exhausted, and Kevin acts really suspiciously. We eventually learned that Kevin had tried to initiate intercourse with Karen while she was really high, and when they began getting frisky, she got really confused and didn't remember anything. She was just in the middle of doing something inappropriate with him that she no longer wanted to do. When she fell asleep, I guess Kevin was afraid that she would say he tried to assault her, and that's why he lost it and tried to regain control of the situation. But he just made it worse. The next day, when we were all sober, we asked if she was okay after he had left to see his mom, and Karen said she couldn't remember the night before, but that she was sure he hadn't done anything malicious. We kept a closer eye on him after that, though. I already had my suspicions of him being abusive, but there wasn't anything we could do without proof, and Karen was set on sticking it out with him. She's an adult, so yeah, they left their messes everywhere, hoarded food, and when their baby came with them, it got worse. They had to change their sleep schedule to be awake at the same time as the baby. So when Ezekiel was awake, they were too. At midnight, we'd hear them clanking around in the kitchen, watching TV loudly, and turning the AC way too high. It really started stressing Babe out, and since I'm the calm one, I told her I'd have a talk with them, putting down some new ground rules. At this point, they had probably 5 days left with us. So one day while Babe was at work, I sat them both down and explained that they could be up as late as they want, but no more cooking after 11 p.m. If they cooked anything, they had to clean up their mess, including dishes. No more touching the thermostat, and to stop stealing the TV from Babe after work. Karen took it all in stride, apologizing and agreeing. But Kevin was combative with most every new rule I gave him. I always do my dishes when I cook. I don't know why this is an issue now. I've never cooked after 11. That shouldn't even be a rule. Well, the thermostat is kind of everyone's game. I don't see why I should be allowed to adjust it. And lastly, well, Babe watches things we don't like to watch. Shouldn't we come to an agreement as a household about what is played in a shared space? I didn't yell or freak out. I just calmly explained to him that these were rules that me and Babe had discussed and that I was being as diplomatic as I could, but that he was stressing us out. He eventually agreed, and right when I thought the conversation was over, he said, "Good thing you brought this up instead of Babe. I'd definitely have fought harder with her about these rules." I was taken aback and audibly said, "Excuse me?" Karen immediately knew Kevin had fucked up and tried, yes, again, to shut him up. I asked him what he meant, and he kind of put his foot in his mouth. "Well, you know, you're the head of the household. I wouldn't expect her to have the authority to..." I calmly interrupted, "Look, buddy, Babe is the sole reason you're here instead of out on the streets. If it were up to me, I don't care if you have a baby or not, I don't care. That's your responsibility. You failed to support your family. This has never been me or Babe's responsibility. If we decided to kick your ass on the curb tomorrow, you'd be gone. You're too unsuccessful to be sexist, shut up, or I don't care what happens to you." I've never taken that tone with him, or anyone really for that matter. I was dead serious though. Babe had stuck her neck out for them time and time again. This Kevin had the audacity to imply he'd undermine Babe because she didn't have the same authority that I did. As soon as Babe got home, I told her what happened and discussed kicking them out early due to the sheer disrespect and entitlement, but Babe just told me to calm down, which is a first, it's usually the other way around, and said that we just wouldn't give them any longer if they didn't have a place to go after their 2 weeks was up. Kevin had refused to get any type of job since the low-income housing won't take us in this late in the game if our income changes, when in reality, he'd spend so long gunning after the low-income housing that if he just got his lazy ass up and got a job, he'd have already gotten them a place to live elsewhere. That's right, folks. This low-income housing place has spent so long by this point stringing Kevin and Karen along that if he'd have just told them to fuck off and got a job, they never would have been homeless to begin with. But every job he'd gotten had disrespected him. 2 days before they were supposed to leave, it was clear. Kevin had spent so long fucking around, there was no way they were going to find a place to stay in 2 days. So Kevin starts trying to negotiate, and guilt, but me and Babe stay firm. He's leaving. We mentioned the idea of Karen staying with the baby and him leaving, but she said she'd rather her and Ezekiel be homeless than part with Kevin. Kevin backed her up and said he wasn't comfortable with them staying away from him for an extended period of time. The day comes for them to leave. They ask one last time if they can stay just another week while the low-income housing strings them along, but we said nope. They had 2 weeks. It's time for them to be grown-ups. By some miracle, Karen's dad says he has an abandoned cabin on some land that probably has electricity and water, and that they can stay there. I found it suspicious that no one, not even their parents, would give them somewhere to go, because we met his mom several times and she was really kind, even giving me and Babe free food for keeping Kevin and Karen with us. So at some point I asked someone who Karen and Kevin had contacted to couch surf with before us, and this individual told me that she gave Karen the option to take the baby and stay with her, but that Kevin couldn't come with. This led me and Babe down a rabbit hole where lots of people, churches, and shelters had given Karen the option to bring the baby and live with them. But everyone had turned down Kevin because they knew him way more than I did, apparently. This frustrated me because they'd said from the beginning that no one had given them any options and that everyone had turned them both down, only to learn that they'd had lots of options that they'd turned down because it would require Kevin splitting from Karen and the baby. That irked me. Dear reader, I appreciate the fact that you made it this far. As someone who lived through this, I deeply hope that my suffering being you entertainment, joy even, for it certainly did not do that for me. In the rush to get them out the door, they had left a few items. An ongoing argument we had was their habit of just leaving unwrapped baby diapers on the floor. I didn't know that until I stepped in one while looking for a movie they'd borrowed and forgot to return. I had to sit them down and tell them that leaving trash and baby diapers on the floor was a no-go. It was disrespectful and disgusting, and I wouldn't tolerate it. This was probably 4 days before they were to leave. Kevin complained that at night it was too far to walk to put the diapers in the trash, so what I told him was to wrap the diaper in a plastic grocery bag and he could leave it until morning and bring it to the garbage when he woke up. I explicitly told him to throw the diapers in the red trash can in the kitchen. We have a separate black trash can in the hallway that we used for cardboard. A chore of mine was after a week, I'd dump the cardboard in the kitchen floor and sort cardboard we'd be keeping from cardboard to get thrown out. This black trash can was brand new, clean as a button. No risk of trash falling out of it when I'd sort cardboard. So the day after they leave, I try to regain my sense of normalcy. I clean the house, and as my final chore, I take the trash can from the hallway and prepare to take it to the kitchen. I dump it out, and what falls out but 6 or 7 full, dirty, stinky diapers. Kevin had thrown them in there, shoved the diapers to the bottom of the can, and squished them down with cardboard, causing them to explode at the bottom and get wet and mushy. So here they are now, diapers in varying stages of decay, oozing spawn juices. I was furious. This was my breaking point. Up until this point, the meanest I'd been was strict. I took pictures and sent them to Kevin and Karen, telling them I didn't appreciate how they treated our home and our hospitality, and I told them I hope they straighten up and figure out how to be adults. Because if they keep going the way they currently are, they will be homeless again with no one who wants to help them and likely get their kid taken away by the state. They blocked me. So I took their diapers and stuffed them in their suitcases they still had left over, as well as grabbing a vape they left at our house and accidentally dropped it inside one of the diapers, which was really unfortunate because it was a vape that Kevin was very proud of, due to the fact it was reusable and not just to be thrown away. And that finally is the end of this long, harrowing, disgusting story. Dear reader, the anxiety and stress you felt reading this saga is understandable if not warranted, but now finally you may rest. If only. Epilogue: The Swim. Much to my dismay, Babe wanted one last Kevin and Karen outing before we left our home state for greener pastures. Given that it had been more than 6 months since our last encounter, I didn't much mind. We decided to pick them up and go for a swim. What's one final horror, right? Let's let bygones be bygones for one day to celebrate the admitted years of history we had with each other. So we pulled up to the low-income apartment they finally managed to move into, which, to be fair, are definitely slick-looking apartments. Yes, reader, to their credit, sticking out the waiting process apparently got them a pretty decent space. Karen gets in, skinny as a twig, and clearly quite pregnant. She's lost a lot of weight since they left our house. But she was definitely pregnant again. A pregnancy we'd later estimate to have started when they lived with us, likely the night Kevin had shocked her into a seizure in our bathtub. So she gets in the car, and next does Kevin, with sleek black sunglasses on, a base pro hat the size of Texas, and big bag of THC flower in a pipe, feeling like the bee's knees, the cat's pajamas, if you will. Brother didn't even bring a grinder. We quickly tell Kevin that no, he won't be doing that, and to leave it inside. He starts to argue, but then Karen says, "Kevin, you know better." I think he was still on probation. Okay, fine. He takes it in and comes back looking more frustrated. We get on the road and he almost immediately starts ranting about some conspiracy theory. He then drops this nugget of gold. He turns to my fiance, who's black, and says, "So what do you think of the rap industry? Seeing as you're the only black person in this car, you're really the only one who can have an opinion on hip-hop according to the so-called Black Lives Matter movement." We were all shocked, even Karen. Babe says, "I don't listen to rap," and Kevin laughs and says, Yes you do. It's kind of in your blood." To which Karen facepalms and Babe says, "No, that's actually really disrespectful, Kevin." And he just rolls his eyes and says, "Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to offend any snowflakes." Babe stops me from saying anything by just shaking her head at me, and Karen scolds Kevin. Kevin then asks if there was a hospital nearby because he wants to jump off the tallest rock at the swimming hole, and he wants to make sure someone can drive him in case he needs emergency services. We all told him that he won't, in fact, be doing that. He pouts. At some point, the subject of Karen being pregnant again comes up, and he says, "Oh yeah, that's going to be fun for her." I refuse to do any more diapers or clean throw up. Not that he did that to begin with, which I witnessed with my own eyes. I'm going to be working soon, and I need to sleep. Yes, dear reader, he's still unemployed by this point. She's working. Again, I want to say something, but Babe stops me. About 3 miles out from the swimming hole, Karen gets carsick and throws up out her door, which is fine, as we were able to stop safely. When she throws up, Kevin goes, "Oh yuck, I'm gonna vomit," and while we're stopped, throws up into the back seat rather than opening his door and throwing up outside. So now Karen is cleaning up his vomit and refuses to let anyone help her. We get to the swimming hole. Everything is fine, going smooth. Then Karen says, "I'm hungry and really tired. Can you go get the sandwich stuff?" To which Kevin complains, but does what she asks. Babe puts a towel on the log we were sitting on and asks Karen to join her on the dry towel instead of sitting in the wet dirt. We're all having fun when Kevin shows up and tells Karen to move. Karen says, "There's no more room on the log though." And he says, "I don't care. I went to the car and got the sandwich stuff, and I don't want to sit on the dirt, move, or I sit on you." It was really awkward because he was really frustrated. I moved off the log and said, "You can have my spot, Kevin, calm down." And he says, "No, she has to learn." I then say, "You can have my spot, Karen, it's fine," and move to the dirt. Karen, embarrassed, moved to the part of the log that wasn't in the shade anymore, and a man sitting nearby went, "Yo, that's bullshit." Kevin says, "Excuse me?" And the guy stands up. I said, "That's bullshit, buddy," he says. "I've been watching how you treat your pregnant girlfriend since you got here. You're a fucking pussy. You took her goggles because you wanted to play in the shallows. Then you took her towel. Then you complained about getting her a sandwich. Your pregnant wife. She probably weighs like 60 pounds right now, and you complained about getting her a sandwich. Then you force her out of her spot. That other lady, Babe, probably don't want to sit next to you. You're such a piece of shit that your buddy had to be a gentleman and give up his seat for her. Man, you're a prick. You're lucky I'm watching my own kids right now and giving my wife a day off, or I'd knock your ass in the sand." Kevin was taken aback and said, "I was just kidding." To which I said, "No, you weren't." Babe tried to tell me to shut up, but the big guy said, "No, he's right. Good for calling out your friend. Look, man, your own buddy's ratting you out. You weren't fucking kidding. If you were, you'd let your baby mama keep her seat. Honestly, if I were you, I'd just leave. At this point, several other people were looking, and a couple of other guys had joined in backing up the first big dude who spoke up. Karen started arguing with them and was like, "You don't know my man. He was just joking. Mind y'all's business," which kind of made them all quiet down. But after that, we just packed up our stuff and left. The day was ruined, but I was giddy with excitement that someone other than me had actually called out Kevin, and I was actually backed up when I did too. The big dude told me and Babe, "Nah, y'all ain't gotta leave." But we explained that we were their ride, to which he said, "Oh, sorry." We left, and the whole way back, Kevin was talking shit about how he totally could have beat that guy up, and how he only didn't because he didn't want to look bad, and he wanted to be the bigger person, and Karen was backing him up with every sentence, just eating it up. It was really sad, but we, yes-anded them the whole way home. We dropped them off, and I can happily say, I haven't seen or talked to either of them since. Karen had her baby around Election Day, and Kevin wasn't happy that it wasn't another boy. Big surprise there. They're going to be evicted soon because their home was unfit, and I think they're on CPS's radar. Kevin and Karen are constantly inviting people over, but asking to bring them food and weed. And recently, Karen had a breakdown on their friend group chat about how Kevin won't get a real job. He's always mad at her about something, and he only ever wants to smoke weed. A lot of friends said, "You should have dropped him back in HS. Now it's going to be a lot harder to get away from him. And you burnt a lot of bridges to stand up for him and enable him." She's upset because she's not Christian. She's a self-proclaimed witch, and he's trying to force her to be Christian. Then around Election Day, Kevin started sending pro-Trump conservative messages to the group from her phone, pretending to be her, and said that he didn't feel comfortable with her talking to anyone who doesn't have the same views as him. This was while she was giving birth in the hospital, by the way, which is how we know she didn't send the messages. Anyhow, we're now halfway across the country from both of them, and I hope it stays this way. Honestly, I know a lot of this could have been avoided if I'd have just told them no, but it's kind of nice to have the stories and experiences that I do now. Now, dear reader, this truly is the end of a saga. Spreading over the last 6 years of my life, this truly is my life experience with a certified Kevin. But all this talk of senseless entitlement and stupidity really makes you think, doesn't it? It certainly made me do some self-reflection. What makes a Kevin a Kevin? Is it the unfounded, untrue assumptions about how our world works? Is it the laziness with an expectation of getting something in return? Is it the thought that if someone talks the loudest and argues the longest, it makes them right? Or could it be enablement? Could it be that being a Kevin is knowing better? Knowing that it's wrong to indulge in the presence of someone so self-absorbed that time spent with them can only be classified as entertainment rather than a relationship? Stay with me now, reader, while I ask a question no one has dared before to ask. Is Kevin a Kevin because of who he is deep down, or how he acts towards other people? Or are we the Kevin? Is there a chance that Kevin, while very much not a reflection of ourselves, is what becomes of us from hurting our own selves? Just for a chance to bear witness to whatever zany adventure this individual goes on next. Like getting too close to a fire, its warmth is good, but by reaching too far near, we burn ourselves in the process? Is it really the Mikes, Todds, and Ians in our lives that are the Kevins? Or is there a chance that we, just by getting too close enough to burn ourselves, are the Kevin? And therein lies, dear reader, the real question of today's epic tale. Goodbye, Kevin and Karen, wherever you are.